Hey guys, I'm Sam, a Team Detroit Tigers fan, and today we're looking at some of the guys that could make the bullpen entering spring training. Today we're looking at 12 guys: Alex Lange, Andrew Chafin, Jason Foley, Tyler Holton, Shelby Miller, Will Vest, Mason Englert, Trey Wintenger, Miguel Diaz, Garrett Hill, Devin Sweet, and Andrew Vasquez. All of these guys have some MLB experience, but it remains to be seen who will actually make this MLB roster, especially because pitchers and catchers have just shown up for spring training. First up, Alex Lange. Last year, Alex Lange was the closer and had an ERA of 3.68 in 67 games. He had 26 saves and struck out 79 guys, while also walking 45. Alex Lange is notoriously wild, having thrown 15 wild pitches in 2022, but only 4 last year. He has a total of 25 wild pitches, and that is just an absurd amount per season. Alex Lange, though, has really good peripheral numbers for pitchers. His XBA is 206, meaning people are expected to hit a 206 average against him. People with 39.1% of the time, which is 99th percentile in MLB. One of the only things he's truly bad at is walks, because he's so wild. His curveball is one of the nastiest curveballs I've ever seen from anybody, and I do think that Alex Lange is probably going to be the closer next year. Alex Lange has a lot of team control and is still fairly young at 28 years old, and so I do think the Tigers will use him as their closer, at least for the time being. Next up, re-signing Andrew Chafin. Andrew Chafin is being re-signed to the Tigers after spending a year away from the Tigers, combining for 51 innings between Arizona and Milwaukee. He is currently 33 years old and has pitched for the Tigers in 2022. In 2022, he pitched really well to the tune of a 3.06 ERA in 57.1 innings. I hope that this is the Andrew Chafin that we get. He is a good lefty specialist and can really strengthen that bullpen as a veteran in a bullpen of a bunch of younger guys who don't have as much MLB experience as he does. He gets a good number of guys to whiff or just not hit the ball hard, and he strikes out a decent number of guys, but he also walks a lot of guys. So you just have to be aware of all these things about Andrew Chafin. I do think he's a good setup man and a good guy to get lefties out, but we'll see how he performs in 2024. One of the things you might have noticed is that the two pitchers I previously mentioned, Alex Lange and Andrew Chafin, are both fairly wild. However, that's not the case for Jason Foley. He doesn't walk as many guys as people like Alex Lange, but he also doesn't strike out as many guys. He's a ground ball pitcher, which is very surprising considering his fastball is his primary pitch. His fastball run value is 20, which is 99th percentile, and he throws it very hard at 97.2 miles an hour on average. Jason Foley also had a really good season last year with a 2.61 ERA, a 2.73 FIP, 69 innings, 70 appearances, and 7 saves. Jason Foley also had a 1.159 whip, and he still strikes out a lot more guys than he walks just because of how few guys he walks. He walked 15 and struck out 55 last year, and in total he struck out 104 compared to 31 he's walked. Jason Foley is a high leverage guy who can get out a lot of ground outs, and I think he's very useful for the Tigers bullpen going into 2024. Last year, we had one of the best long relievers in baseball. Tyler Holton had an 85.1 ERA with 74 strikeouts and a 2.11 ERA in 85 innings. He is very valuable to the Tigers bullpen with his .87 whip, getting not a lot of guys to hit the ball hard and a lot of guys to just ground out or just strike out. He doesn't strike out too many guys, but he also barely walks any, which leads to a very good whip as well as just great values across the board. His fastball run value is 97th percentile out of MLB at 17 run value points, and his breaking ball and off speed are also positives. The only thing that he's not great at is he doesn't throw so hard, but he's also still a very good pitcher. He had a 2.10 ERA plus last year, meaning he was 110% better than the average pitcher, and that's crazy in my opinion. I do think that Tyler Holton will have a medium reliever role or even a long relief role. He might even get a couple of spot starts just because he's a long reliever. I think Tyler Holton, he's a great pickup last year and had 3 WAR, second most on the team, which is crazy. In the offseason, the Tigers signed a older former starting pitcher turned reliever named Shelby Miller. He was really good with the Dodgers last year, but has been mediocre over his career. He has a career 4.08 ERA in 206 games. 133 of them were starts. He only has one All-Star appearance and lost a ton of games. But he overall was good last year. The Tigers saw something in him and signed him. He had a 1.71 ERA last year, but previously before that he had a 6.43 ERA in 2022, 9.42 ERA in 2021. Didn't play in 2020. In 2019, he had an 8.5 ERA. 2018 was a 10 ERA. So I just think that Shelby Miller, he was a signing for the Tigers. I do think that he might not be the best signing, but we have to see how he can pitch out of the bullpen for a full season because he is a good pitcher. He was drafted in the first round, but we just have to see whether or not he can actually pitch sort of similarly to how he pitched for the Dodgers, which I do think is sort of up in the air, but I think it's not that likely, at least compared to some of these other guys. Will Vest is another pitcher the Tigers have some question marks with, as he has gone from bad to mediocre to good. I do think that he will stay good with his 1.49 ERA plus and ERA that was worse than his FIP, so he pitched worse than he could have with a 2.98 ERA to a 2.55 FIP. I do think that his strikeout and walks numbers are very good. All those culminating in a very good pitcher, but also he isn't gonna be in as many high leverage situations as some of the other guys, but he still is, I think, a good pitcher for the Tigers to have in their back of their minds last year, just in the bullpen, and maybe he'll even take another step forward. A lot of these guys on the bullpen are older, but have a lot of team control, so the Tigers will still have Will Vest for another few years, as he came up in 2021 with Seattle before going to Detroit in 2022 and 2023, becoming way better of a pitcher. I think Will Vest is probably a middle reliever at this point, but maybe could become a setup guy or even the closer if everything goes really well for him and maybe Alex Lange does badly. We finally get to a young guy in this bullpen, Mason Englert. Last year was bad. He had a 5.46 ERA coming up from AAA in 56 innings, only striking out 41. He has very few good things on his card on Baseball Savant. The only thing that's above like 35% is his walk rate, which is in the 76th percentile. Everywhere else, however, he's just bad. Expected ERA of 6.56. Expected batting average of 310. He doesn't throw hard. He only really came up because the Tigers needed an arm. I do think that he has a chance to pitch some more this year. He will definitely improve just because he can't stay that bad and he's getting older. He's going to be coached by some of the good staff that the Tigers have. But I do think that this bullpen, he's not a key piece, more of a longer relief kind of role. If he even makes it, he might not make it. He might be sent down to AAA because of his options, but also he might not. We don't know. The Tigers signed Trey Wintenger last year for a minor league option, and he's had some previous MLB experience. He's 29 and pitched 17 games last year with 17 innings, 22 strikeouts to 7 walks. He isn't going to be great. He had a 5 ERA last year, but his FIP was decent. But overall, Trey Wintenger, he's just not really going to be good for the Tigers. He has one option left. He's going to turn 30 next year, even this season, and I do think that Trey Wintenger, he's just not gonna be that guy in the bullpen. He was signed to a minor league deal. I do think that while he had good percentiles in 2019, he still throws hard, has good extension, because he's tall. I don't know how much else he really has going for him. He's barely pitched recently, but we'll see how spring training goes, especially because he's only a 2-pitch pitcher now. So, that doesn't always go well. Miguel Diaz, I do think, is decent. He is not going to be the wow guy. He doesn't throw particularly hard. He doesn't do anything particularly well, but I do think he can eat some innings in the bullpen. He hasn't thrown a full season. He gets injured quite easily, and he also hasn't just had a good opportunity. I do think that the Tigers will give him a chance, but I also don't think that he will get a whole season's worth of innings, like 60 innings. The most he's ever pitched is 42 innings in 2021, where he had a 3.64 ERA and a 4.81 FIP. But he still isn't really that good. He's gonna walk a decent number of guys. His peripherals aren't bad, but they aren't great. And places project him to have like a 4 ERA on Fangraphs, a 3.79 ERA on Baseball Reference. Like they also project him to only have like 40 innings around there. So he isn't going to be a major piece, but he does have a major league contract, I believe. And so I do think he will still pitch some. The Tigers' depth in the bullpen isn't that good. The rest of these guys, like Garrett Hill and even a couple of guys before him, just haven't been good, and they're fairly old. So Garrett Hill, for example, has a career 5.09 ERA, and last year he was terrible in 9 games with the Tigers. Last year, a 2.106 whip, not ERA, whip, and a 9.19 ERA. Garrett Hill just doesn't really have anything going for him. He doesn't throw that hard. Guys hit the ball hard off of him. It's just in general, he's not the greatest pitcher. And I do think that Garrett Hill, he's just going to be an innings eater if the Tigers need an extra bullpen arm. I do think that he is going to be probably in AAA for much of the year because they still have an option, if I remember correctly. And I do think that Garrett Hill will be not pitching much for the Tigers unless they need like a spot start or just a long reliever for a day, something like that. Then he'll come up. But other than that, I don't think Garrett Hill is really going to pitch in 2024. Next guy, Devin Sweet. He's 27 years old right now, pitched just in 2023, and just doesn't have a ton going for him again. People don't hit the ball that hard off of him, but he also isn't going to pitch much. He only pitched 8 innings last year, and I do think that the Tigers' bullpen is just good enough that they don't really need him, and he was actually outrighted to AAA on the 5th of February. I do think that Devin Sweet could pitch. He pitched last year, but I don't think Devin Sweet will pitch much. I do think we're just getting into there's a chance guys, but guys that don't really have a ton of a chance. Just like him and Andrew Vasquez is who's the last guy, Garrett Hill and Miguel Diaz. I do think that these guys have a chance, but I do think Devin Sweet is the least likely to make the team out of all these guys. If the Tigers need one more lefty, they have Andrew Vasquez to go to. Andrew Vasquez doesn't allow people to hit the ball hard off him, with the average exit velocity being 85.7. People just only hit the ball hard off him 30% of the time, and he gets a ground ball around 50% of the time. Overall, Andrew Vasquez, while he isn't going to pitch a ton, he pitched his entire career, which is 5 years. He's only pitched 64 innings, but he still does have a 4.24 ERA over those innings, mostly carried by his 2.27 ERA in Philadelphia last year. He was picked up by the Tigers on waivers last year and had an 8 ERA, but that's not gonna really be good for the Tigers. But if you need a lefty to get a couple lefty guys out, Andrew Vasquez can do that. I do think he might make the team just because of those opportunities. I think Alex Lange will be the closer, and just every other spot in the bullpen will sort of be flipped around come the regular season. I think we have to really watch for the Tigers' bullpen in spring training, as I think they're going to be the make or break part of this team. They can really see if we can help close out games. If you enjoyed, leave a like, rate our podcast, and don't forget, go Tigers.